look at this entire pact?
I don't think the Labour Pact has come in isolation. It has come in with the Russian education industry agency being established in December in India, and that both of them together, it looks at a more comprehensive way of developing skill as well as employment between these two nations. So it's a brain circulation kind of module which was going to benefit, where Indian students can study in Russia and then gain, and mutual recognition of qualifications is going to be part of it, which is going to help ensure that skilled labor is not manipulated just because they are not, their qualification is not completely recognized. And private contracts will also have protection, there'll be unionization. So there have been, both nations have taken cognizance of the fact that there are loopholes where exploitation is happening of labor and of India's need to find employment for its growing youth population. And this is an avenue that Russia wants to explore. And for that, both governments have taken this protective step of establishing this labor pact, so that the nation, neither of them feel cheated out of whether somebody stating they're qualified but is not really qualified for that particular job, and vice versa, somebody being qualified but not being paid enough for that job. So that happens. As far as the remittance question that was raised, I'm not very well versed in it, but what I do know is that they are working on a rupee to ruble conversion using the FPS and UPI connection. They're trying to build that so that a direct conversion can happen between these two currencies, and the remittance problem can be addressed without actually having to go via a third system, which might have problems with sanction, which might lead to sanctions related problems. So there are economic developments also that are being addressed as of now, that may answer to the need of the nations that are actually being part of all these various MOUs and pacts that are being built. So I think people have actually sat down, looked at the broader picture in a macro format, and then gone into the micro details of how to ensure not just a cooperation in terms of word symbolism or just a tradition and cultural exchange, but to address the problems and the needs of each other in a long-term basis, so that it is not just today that India and Russia are being linked together for the next foreseeable 25 years, because now it's been 25 years. 2000, they started this entire exchange of visiting heads and special strategic partnership, etc. So for 25 years, we've had these kind of gestures coming across. So for the next 25 years, they're laying the foundation through these various agreements and pacts. And I hope, at least it's my personal hope, that the minutest of details have been looked into, so that the future is more secure, not just for India, but for Russia and India relations.
Absolutely. And Ambassador Goyal, we have been talking about pacts. But if I come across to you and if we discuss the broader picture, there was a RELOS or a logistics pact that was actually rectified by the Russian Duma just days before President Putin actually arrived in India. The timing of it was obviously very strategic, but what we want to discuss here is the access of those ports, because we are getting access to air bases, but we are also getting access to the naval bases. If we don't go into the military aspects of it, but geopolitically and strategically, India in the Arctic and Russia in the Indian Ocean, all access, no holds bar for whatever reason. How do you look at that?
Very carefully. It's going to be, you have opened a question here on the media, which many foreign policy executors, would be very, very hesitant to respond, even in private conversations. Shivani, you will forgive me, because you obviously have done a lot of research, and you know the kind of contest the contest is going to generate, not just Indian Ocean or Arctic, but globally. Also, please do remember that India and the USA also have an agreement on sharing the logistics. How are they going to work together is a question. People in both the countries and many other countries, including the USA, will need to ponder over. They will need to really make sure that it does not create, uh, I will use a very soft word, conflict on ground. Therefore, I would really say that we'll have to leave it here and see how it comes up in future when the actual execution, implementation of the agreement begins to take place.
Okay. So as per your understanding, do you think there are any downsides to this entire summit that is happening?
I wish I could say I can't comment on that really. I can't really comment on that.
All right. So do you think that, however, we know that India and Russia share a very privileged and very strategic partnership, and that's been over the years, but do you think this is marking a pivot? Because this is going further and beyond that, sir.
Absolutely. You see, when you sign an agreement of this kind, you are not only sharing your capabilities, you are sharing information, you're basically getting totally enmeshed with each other's defense structures. And therefore, to have an agreement of this kind, and incidentally, this agreement was, of course, passed by Duma only 2 days ago, but it had been in the making for several months. From the beginning of the year, RELOS, it has been done. So it indicates a kind of a confidence and trust in the minds of the institutions of the two countries that they can work together. Therefore, it already it's a step to indicate the kind of strong relationship and the meaningful relationship that India and Russia are looking forward to. And as I said earlier, when we begin to actually work together to implement the agreement, that is when we will see how the actual thing takes place. So yes, Shivani, I will leave it there.
Right. Professor Agarwal, if I can rope you back into this discussion, if we look at it economically, we were talking about a pact that is likely on the ruble and rupee front, where the RuPay cards will be used and the MIR or the Mir cards from Russia will be used in India. How do you look at that?
You see, first of all, as for the downside you mentioned, I would like to outline we have already bearing the heat of the downside for last 5-6 months now, given that Trump has actually increased from 25% to 50% the tariff on account of just one particular component, which is oil.
Yeah.
So we are already bearing that heat, so that kind of a heat may be visible in case from whether it is a question of Ukraine or Russia or US or some other countries which are not seeing eye to eye with Russia and may be envious of the trade relationships we develop with Russia. As far as the economic, conversion of currency is concerned, banking is very controlled in Russia. We have had a controlled banking in India also prior to 1980s, 1990s. But it is very highly controlled banking in Russia. The ruble trade contracts which are getting into, whether it's oil, whether it is trade contracts, yes, there the economic aspect is being mentioned. Whether we are looking at a rupee trade based trade or a ruble based trade, how the payments will go forward and so on and so forth. However, when it comes to all other contracts, whether it is labor and other, there is no clarity on how the trade will take place. The fact that rupiah has gone forth, we have seen a success in the UAE, which is again a very controlled economy in terms of movement of funds from the UAE or the Arabic region coming into India. We've had similar concerns there. The rupiah has shown its strength, which has clearly given a big challenge to Master and Visa. But how will it phase up in Russia? I am not internally very sure how well are they utilizing the UPI payment gateways or similar kind of frameworks within Russia. Given that my last visit was almost a decade back, I really cannot say personally what is happening. I can only say what we come to read on the media, which also is largely controlled, including whether it is Russia, China, or US.
Sir, I apologize for interrupting you, but we have someone joining us on the phone line.